All right, so let's
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
wait for the room to fill in a bit more. We can get started. But yay!
Yay.
Thank you, everyone. All right, I'll give it 2 more minutes. And awesome. Oh, Annyeong, and welcome to PNP Live. My name is Isa, and I am a bookseller of politics and prose, and I have the honor of being your host this evening. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning into this virtual format, which allows us to continue to bring amazing authors like the ones we have tonight and their important books to readers just like you. So I'm so excited to welcome our very special guests tonight. We have Lyla Lee, Stephan Lee, and XCO, along with our very own Leah Meadvin to celebrate the release of Axie's amazing new book, XOXO. So you can click the link we will drop in the chat to get your own copies of our guests' books, XOXO, I'll Be the One, and K-Pop Confidential. And if you have questions for our guests this evening, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. And at the end of the chat, our guests will have some time to answer your questions. You can also vote in questions you like and you want answered by clicking the thumbs up button. And as always, please remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that friends be respectful of one another in the questions and comments. So it's truly a pleasure to introduce our amazing guests tonight. Let's start it off with Stephan Lee. He is a journalist, author, and multi-fandom K-pop stan. He currently works as the senior editor at Bustle after a 5-year stretch covering books and movies at Entertainment Weekly. At EW, he actually traveled to Seoul for 3 weeks to write a feature on the Korean entertainment's world domination, interviewing K-pop idols, filmmakers, and drama writers. I honestly want that life, but you do you. He's earned an MFA in creative writing interview at the New School, and K-pop Confidential, which came out in January of 2020, is his debut novel. But the sequel, K-pop Revolution, will be out next April, so definitely watch out for that. Next up, we have Lyla Lee, who is the author of the Minby Kim series and the YA novel I'll Be the One, which came out in June of last year. Although she was born in a small town in South Korea, she's since then lived in various parts of the United States, including California, Florida, and Texas. After working various jobs in Hollywood, um, and studies psychology and cinematic arts at the University of Southern California. She now lives in Dallas, Texas. And when she is not reading, she is teaching kids, petting cute dogs, and searching for the perfect bowl of bingsu or shaved ice. Honestly, that's the best way to beat the heat now. And last but definitely not least, we have Axio, who is a first gen Korean American who was born in NYC and raised in New Jersey. She studied Korean history and creative writing as an undergrad in UC San Diego and holds an MFA from Lesley University in writing for young people. Her passions include K-pop, anime, stationery supplies, and milk tea. Honestly, same. And she resides in Las Vegas, Nevada with her puppy Toro, who is not with us tonight. She is the author of the Rebel Soul series and XOXO, which her came out last Tuesday. It's her YA contemporary rom-com. Tonight, with our awesome guests, we'll be talking K-pop writing, romance, and their amazing K-pop inspired stories. So without further ado, I will be turning it over to Leah. Please, everyone, join me once again in welcoming Stephan, Lyla, and Axie to PNP Live. Yay.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Isa. That was awesome. Thank you so much, fellow bookseller, for that great introduction. And it's so special to have you all here today and get to celebrate the release of XOXO. So happy birthday again, Oxy. Oh my gosh, and celebrate all things K-pop and your amazing writing and books. So I guess it's time to dive in. So before we start, I'll always like to ask friends who are meeting your books for the first time, who are joining us this evening, if you could each give like a quick bite of what your stories are about, to kind of grab them in for those friends that haven't gotten them yet. So in honor of your new book, Oxy, you want to go first?
Yes.
And tell us about XOXO.
Yes.
So in XOXO, yay! It's about a Korean American girl, Jenny, who lives in LA, who she goes into she works at her uncle's noraebang, his like karaoke bar, and one day she meets a mysterious stranger who they hit it off and they have a fun night in LA together. But then after he never texts her back, and she's like, oh, so upset. And then a couple months later, she ends up moving to Seoul because her grandma's sick, but her mom and her end up moving to Seoul for a couple of months. And so she enrolls in a performing arts school. And while there, she meets one of her classmates who is the same boy, Jaewoo. And not only that, but he is a K-pop idol. He is the main singer of XOXO.
Oh, thank you so much. Stephan, you want to go first, to go next, and tell us about K-pop Confidential?
Yeah, K-pop Confidential. It's about a teenage girl named Candace Park who lives in New Jersey, and she auditions for a big K-pop company that's never debuted a girl group on a dare, and she actually gets in, and she has to go to Korea for the first time to enter the K-pop trainee process. And as XOXO, and I'll be the one get into, it's like a real life Hunger Games. It's crazy. And she is way in over her head, but she finds herself in a love triangle and a scandal. So that's K-pop Confidential.
Young Bae all the way. Sorry, scandal done. And Lyla, you want to share yours? Is an amazing one as well.
Yeah, so I'm the author of I'll Be the One, which is about a Korean American teenager who enters an internationally broadcasted reality TV show to become the world's first plus-size K-pop star. And she falls in love with her competition, and there's a lot of reality TV drama, but also very wholesome, like melt your heart moments that are very K-drama worthy.
Yeah. You all gave us the best K-drama vibes in all of your books. And I love them all so much, but I find that like all of them are so amazingly unique in how they kind of tackle the subject matter too. So my first big question for all of you is, what is it about music and K-pop in particular that brings you guys joy, that brought you to incorporate into your books? Do you want to share first?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a K-pop fan my whole life. Stephan and Lyla know, but I've been a fan since elementary school. I think that's like the first generation K-pop groups, so like Jinhwa and Finkel or those kind of groups. And I think it's just, I love the music, but also the visuals, the performance aspect was so great to me just to see them perform. And then later when I really got into K-pop in middle school and high school, I used to watch all the variety shows I'd be on, and the K-pop idols have such great, like the idol groups have such great chemistry together as friends. And I would just love to watch them and it makes me feel so happy when they're interacting together, so supporting each other and working hard together. And I feel like that whole K-pop culture and the music is the reason it really appeals to me.
Is there a particular song or music video that was like your big entry point that you're just like, oh, this is my jam when you're younger?
Well, big entry point in elementary school was Finkel. But I think one of the biggest ones that I'm just thinking of right now just pops into my head is Shiny's Ding Dong Ding, or Ring Ding Dong. And you know how it has like the whole like ring ding dong ring.
The dance is iconic.
Yeah, iconic. What I used to do, it came out when I was in college, and I would used to like when I had to drop my friends off, I would blast it, and then they'd be like, no, they'd get out of the car like it's just like it's like the best song. I used to do that.
Oh,
amazing.
Stephan, you want to share what is it about that you love about K-pop and music, and also your favorite entry point?
Like I don't know, like this, it's only the first question and it's like so kind of innocuous, but I'm already like feeling so many feels. Maybe it's just because I finished XOXO, so I'm still feeling residual XOXO feels, but like yeah, it like K-pop it being like so the moment, and like the fact that like each of us has like a book about K-pop where like it's proudly about K-pop is like so like kind of a game changer, because like I'm like an older-ish millennial. So like when I was growing up in Atlanta, I absolutely did not listen to K-pop. I just thought it was just like not like a cool thing, or it wouldn't like, you know, behoove me to like focus on it. But like um now that it's come so full circle, and I've always loved pop music and especially female pop stars. Like right here is, I can't angle my computer, but I have a giant poster of Britney Spears. It's the biggest thing in my apartment. And like that's stuff that I never thought that I could put on my walls, just like as a boy growing up. And like for there to be like all these like amazing K-pop stars who are Korean that like my friends know about, and that like on Fire Island, the guys are singing Blackpink in the pool in Korean, is just like so mind blowing. And like it means so much to be able to see it and be part of it too.
Yeah, I definitely, sorry, but yeah, I definitely like see a lot of my experiences reflected in Stephan's and Axie's. Except I guess like I'm always like whenever I do these events, I always have to say like I'm like the youngest one. So like I was born in Korea in the 90s when like K-pop was like just starting, and like I grew up. You can just say that like K-pop and I have both always existed in the same plane, and as far as like so I grew up with like all the different like eras of K-pop, like the whole Shinhwa era, and then like DBSK's Virginia Shiny era, and then when I was in college, BTS started like getting popular. So it's just been like such a big part of my life. But on a personal level, like I think my favorite thing about the K-pop is the energy and the lyrics. And like a lot of the lyrics are really like positive and very like self-affirming, and like, yeah, we're gonna achieve our dreams, and like, yeah, love is great. And they're very positive. And I just remember like during the hardest times of my life, K-pop has been there for me to like kind of cheer me up. So, especially for I'll Be the One, like it was basically the whole movie's background story of how I got to write I'll Be the One is that it's actually my third book that I submitted to publishers. And like since like I'd gotten so much rejection up to that point, I was like pretty like depressed. But then like watching BTS videos and kind of learning how to dance through BTS videos like really cheered me up. And that's just like how important and how like amazing K-pop is.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, there's one moment in XOXO where Jenny says that like Koreans love tragic stories, but they also love like almost sappily happy stories. But actually, that comes from the same place, and I think that's what like characterizes Korean entertainment, including, you know, both of your books too.
Yeah.
Very great point. Oh, and that kind of segues into my next question that I was going to get into, because you all, of course, tackle K-pop, but what brought you to your particular stories? Because we have one that's very specific in the world of K-pop, one that's more adjacent, and one that's a great competition that's here too. So, Axie, you want to start? Like, what brought you to write this fabulous rom-com, all the feels book, but also
Yeah, I mean, I definitely approached it from the angle of it being a rom-com where it's focusing on the romance. So I knew that it would be the main character's not an idol, and she's gonna meet an idol and they're gonna fall in love. And I also was writing this book in conversation sort of with Lyla's and Stephan's, because Lyla's had been out, and Stephan's, yours was also like, you both had like a similar like release date, right? Something like that. I definitely read both of yours while I was writing mine. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I was definitely like, well, it's a different, I loved how your books tackle the K-pop industry, or look at it a different way, coming at it in different angles. And I was like, okay, I'm writing it from another different angle. so I definitely was inspired by your books. But yeah, I think for me specifically, it was like, I knew that she wasn't going to have to go through the training process. So I was like, less research for me, yes. And I knew that it was more of her learning through her love interest about what it's like to be an idol. And he's the equivalent is that he's like just a debut that was like a really big hit debut. That's like his idol group. It's like they had just come out with their album, and when she first meets them, they're on like the brink of popularity, but then when she sees them again, they're like full-blown popular. So it's like a fun look into and I also did that because he's in high school. So there was like a lot of thinking involved. I was like, there's no way he'd be like so popular at 17. I mean, maybe. I mean, there's like, that also happens, but then he'd probably be the youngest member. And I didn't want him to be the youngest member just because like that young member energy, I was like, I don't know if I want that for my love interest this time around. So there's like a lot of thinking that came into just specifically what I needed for my specific story. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And Stephan, I mean, you've been in the world and gotten to interview people. What was the point that brought you to this story?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about, for the longest time, I was thinking people should write, YA books about K-pop because there's so much built-in drama, like no dating allowed. I think all three of us definitely explored that. And like, I think like YA, like it almost feels in a way, even though it is the real world and there's like logical reasons for all these things to be the way they are, it almost felt dystopian a little bit just because, the rules and the stakes are so high. So I don't know, I think I'm like a very emotional person. So like I thought about like what would like being in the world of K-pop like bring up to, I don't know, someone like me. And like, even though I'm not a girl, I do think Candace is a lot like me. So I was just like, okay, having to go to Korea and do something that like people love K-pop stars, but nobody wants their kid to be a K-pop star. So like saying that this is what I want is really scary, but it's also really kind of embarrassing too, to say this is what I want. And I think we can all relate to that being writers as well. And also thinking that you can do it. And also like K-pop, and I think just Hollywood or entertainment in general, they're like, your value is so conditional. It's like what you can supply to other people, to a company, to fans. And I wanted to show like how like self-worth, intrinsic self-worth, and the self-worth that people who really care about you, like your parents, can build you up so that like when you go to a place where it's all attacking you all at once, you can still hold on to it. So that's kind of where I came into it.
No, I truly got that from your book, and that's what really stood out. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna go on to my next one. I feel like place also takes a big center stage in a lot of your books too. So first while XOXO begins in San Francisco and shows such a vibrant Korean American community there, Seoul really plays such a large role in your book. So as well as in Stephan's. So for both of you, did you do any particular research or incorporate any special or personal experiences into your novels?
Yeah, specifically with XOXO, actually, before I even thought of it being like K-pop book, I was thinking it would be a book that's like a love letter to Seoul, because I love Seoul so much and I haven't been for a long time. Well, not long, it's like been 2 years, but that feels long. And so I definitely felt like it was kind of like I even have a blog post, I think, basically that's like Jenny's Seoul tour guide. Because I wanted to show like how vibrant the city is. I wanted to show how all the things that I loved about the city, namely food. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna pack this whole book with like a ton of food. And I thought that setting of Seoul would just be really romantic too. The cover takes place in an area of Seoul. It's my favorite area. And it's like the traditional area of Seoul, like Insadong is around there. I think this is like a specific street that I don't even know if they go to in the book. I don't think they do, but I love how the artist put like all the beautiful architecture on the cover and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely specifically wanted the book to be set in Seoul, and I was when I was writing it too. So it actually begins in LA. LA's K-Town, and and I was like, I love LA's K-Town, but I was like, I want them to get to Seoul. I think they get there like pretty fast. And I was like, okay, they have to get there so that all the fun can begin and they can start eating. Yeah.
And Stephan, do you want to speak to, I know Candace does not have a lot of time to really be in the city, but definitely they still gotta have some really great moments in your books.
Yeah, I really just wanted to like highlight the parts that feel when you're Korean American and you go to Korea, or like, any, immigrant who goes to the country of their parents' origin, you feel at once like really familiar with it, but then also even more foreign because you look like everybody, but it's just like, oh my God, everyone can tell I'm American. And like some people think that's interesting, but some people yell at you for it. And like, like an ajumma is just like, have manners, like speak Korean. I wanted to really explore that and just like all the aspects of it that are so cool and feel like they should be familiar, but are also like foreign in a really cool way.
Yeah, I love that. And then kind of like pivoting stateside, even though it's only a little bit in XOXO, and it's definitely just amazing in I'll Be the One, you both really each paint a vivid picture of Korean American culture in your books. And I wonder if you want to speak to any of the personal experiences used in the story in your books as well. Lyla, if you want to go first.
I actually didn't get a chance to answer the previous questions, but it's fine. It's okay, but because it's all related to what the questions all happen to like line up with what I'm about to say. But basically, I'll Be the One is set in LA, which is a very vibrant like Korean American population, and the book is basically like on the surface it's about K-pop, but at its core it's about like being Korean American, and she has a lot of conflict between like what she's expected to as a Korean kid versus like what she's kind of like used to as someone who like was like born and raised in LA. And so I feel like this goes back to the previous question of like setting. I think the reason why that I like ended up writing a competition and set in LA is because LA is where I went to college, and that's where I pretty much was like an independent like adult for the first time. And even though like Sky's not a teenager, like she kind of finds herself through her friends and through exploring LA, and in a way that like, and then that kind of reflects how I assimilated that as like in college after like my very sheltered Korean American childhood.
I was telling you before the panel started, but I actually grew up in New Jersey, not that long distance from Fort Lee, which is a similar kind of like where you live in your like little suburb, and then there's a place that you can go to that is like Korea land, mini Korea America land. And so I live in Las Vegas now, and then I go to LA, every now and then, and we always go to K-Town just because they have all the food. And Las Vegas has good food too, though, good Korean food. And so for me, it seemed almost natural to put it in Koreatown because I already knew, I've never lived in Koreatown, my mom has, but I knew that it would have a similar culture to maybe like a Fort Lee culture, where it's like all of the, I think in the opening page, Jenny's walking by and like her uncle owns a noraebang, like karaoke bar, but right next door is a Korean hair salon. And the lady, the woman that owns the hair salon is just like feeding her without asking her if she needs food, and like, you know, saying all these slightly inappropriate things, and just like mothering her as like just an auntie, like a neighborhood auntie. And I was like, I feel like this would happen in K-Town, because this is a thing that happens in like Korean communities. And so for me, it was putting some of that flavor into the book, that Korean American Cape Town vibe. And for the Korean American identity, it's just like what Stephan was saying about fish out of water. When you go to Seoul and like you look Korean, I have been asked for directions when I'm in Korea. And I'm like, how? I was like, I don't know. And they're like, what? Because like I look very Korean, but when, you know, I don't know anything. And like, so every time I've gone to Korea, someone has asked me for directions. Someone who lives in Seoul has asked me directions about how to get somewhere. And I'm just like, I don't know. And they look at me like, okay, because usually young people like know everything. But yeah, I've had situations too where like I go to Korea and like the salespeople, you know, if I'm speaking English, they're like, you know, don't speak English, speak Korean, especially in the shijangs, the like what is it, like the marketplaces. But yeah, I definitely when I was writing this book, I related to how Jenny feels, which is being a fish out of water. She's definitely more fluent than I am. I'm not like as fluent as her in Korean. And I've been there and she hasn't, but it still has that fun like element of discovering your culture and your heritage and feeling like you're belonging, but also seeing those differences. Like, I feel like American culture is like, we're very independent, while Koreans are more of like collective. They're more of like, the culture is very family oriented and group oriented. So I felt like Jenny struggled with that in the book. Because I was, you know, as an independent Korean American woman, I sometimes struggle with that too.
Stephan, do you have anything to share as well? Even though your character isn't here as long, it definitely is very prevalent and a presence in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do with my book, and what I also think that Axie and Lyla do brilliantly too, is when the main characters kind of misunderstand things, but in an interesting way that kind of reveals something about like the differences. Like, it's so funny because I put a lot of words that I misunderstood in Korean into the book. This isn't in the book, but like, you know, my mom thinks it's really funny when I misunderstand certain things, and she actually thinks I misunderstand them in a smart way. Like, I used to think that the word sheepsanim, which is like kind of like a respectful word for someone at a church, an adult at a church, meant, oh, you say that for someone when they've like bought a house in America. That's someone who's bought a cheap, someone who's bought a, and she's like, you know, that's completely wrong, but like in a way it's kind of right. So like, yeah, like I just like really loved those moments, and that's what I tried to weave in, because everyone has felt kind of foreign where they shouldn't feel foreign. So yeah.
I love that for all. Yeah, I think we have enough time for a few more of my questions, and then we can move on to all of our friends. So my next one is, while many of your characters struggle for their art in their own way, I feel like each year your books really address the need for self-love. And I always like to ask, did you learn anything new about yourself while writing your book? And do you have any advice for readers who are coming to your books as well?
That's a good question, but a hard question. I'm
Very
thinking.
At the moment, because I know I'm kind of that. Whoever feels ready for that one too.
Oh, okay, so I have something. So, okay, it's the corniest and most pretentious thing in the world to be like, oh, I learned so much from my main character. My main character taught me something. But like writing the sequel to K-Pop Confidential, I really felt that, because even though putting out, you know, a YA novel is nothing compared to like debuting in terms of how much, you know, criticism you get, or like how scary it is to keep enjoying creating just for the sake of it after you've put something out, because you kind of know the consequences of everything. You're like, oh, I took a hot take in this book, someone's gonna say something, you know, or someone might say something, and like being really scared of that kind of thing. or like, will this knock out like a sector of like the readership, you know? But like, yeah, like I think being able to like make yourself vulnerable in that way and like create a space to like create without like, even though like the distraction of what people say about you is so strong, but to be able to put that aside, I think like that is something I really learned about writing from writing these books.
Yeah, I think, well, XOXO was my third book. So it was interesting because I remember I was writing a scene where it was taking place in the boarding school. And I was saying, I remember emailing my editor and I was like, but this specifically wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. And she's like, it's fiction. Like, you know, you don't have to, everything doesn't have to be completely realistic. And that actually spoke to me because I think, especially because a lot of what we write is our cultural identity, where it's kind of like nerve-wracking that you want to get everything right because you don't want to disappoint anyone, and you know, you don't want to get people angry. Especially like for me, I'm like my Korean American readers, I like really want to, you know, for them to pick up the book and feel seen and not be like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But that actually really helped me when my editor said that, because it gave me this like feeling of freedom. And then even like Stephan and Lyla's books being out also gives that sense of freedom to me, because it's like, you don't have to be the one story about K-pop. You know, you can be one of the amazing stories about K-pop. And so that while writing this book, I kind of had that sort of like breakthrough moment, because I remember with my debut, I was so worried. Like I was like, you know, every Korean person I know read it before it gets published, so it's like not offensive. And for this book, I was like, this is my identity. I don't have to police my own self. I can be free with it, and I can exist in a space with other writers who are expressing their own identities in their books too. And not even they could just write about like, you know, something random. But yeah, that was something I kind of realized as I was writing this book, my third book.
Thank you so much. And Lyla?
For me, I feel like I learned a lot from debuting during a pandemic. Because I feel like when I was writing the book, everything was fine. Like, I mean, everything wasn't fine, but like when I was actually writing the book, it was like the stakes were a lot like less stressful than, I mean, not that like the stakes are really high in my own life, but like globally, it was like pretty peaceful. But when like I'll Be the One came out last June, it was like, oh my God, are we ever gonna like get out of this pandemic? Like, what's gonna happen? So just so much unknown and so much fear. And like, but I think what really helped me was like seeing people's reactions to the book through social media and like YouTube, and like seeing like how, like, even though like for me, like personally, it was just like a year where my tour got canceled and all these events got canceled. I was still able to help people. I was able to like brighten their days through my words. Like that really like helped me kind of like realize my self-worth a little bit, because like I feel like before debut I was so stressed out about like, oh no, it has to be perfect, I have to do this tour and stuff. But kind of like my book being out there and seeing people's reactions to it, and like seeing that like it was okay that like if I booked just like just having like the satisfaction that like my book is out there helping people during the pandemic, that like kind of helped me a lot with like my own like self-worth.
Well, you should be proud because your book is awesome. And on a personal note, all of your books really helped me through last year. So yours in particular. So thank you so much. And sadly, I feel like I have so many more questions, but I have to start wrapping up so we can take some of our viewer questions. But right before I pivot, I just want to do one last rapid fire round. One word really quick, what first comes to your mind, and then we can take those viewer questions. So you guys ready? Yes. Okay. So first question, and we'll go around. We'll go Ashi, Stephan, and Lyla. Okay. So First, favorite K-pop group or artist?
How dare, how dare you?
Comes to mind.
Oh, first, you said first ever.
Yep.
First ever? Okay.
First
Finzel.
that comes to mind.
Oh, IU.
Okay.
IU's my ultimate bias or ultimate idol.
Oh, I love her. I would have to say I'm late to K-pop. I would say 21 for sure.
Lyla.
As a teen, DBSK, now BTS.
Okay. Bubble tea order.
Brown sugar, milk tea.
Yes.
Yes, I like matcha, but when I want to feel like Candace, I choose taro because it's purple.
Oh, it is. So good.
I'm laughing because both of my go-tos, but it depends on time of day because I'm very caffeine sensitive. So in the morning is matcha and afternoon is taro.
Go to karaoke song choice.
Oh, BTS, Spring Day.
Oh God. I do really easy songs with a very limited range. I do Summer Nights from Greece.
Yes,
It's so
such a good one.
and I also do Wonderwall by
Oh,
it's
that's a
such
good
like an easy, like holding those notes. Yeah.
one. And of course Britney. Britney's always
Yeah.
top. Yeah.
Her songs are weirdly hard though. You
Yeah.
wouldn't think.
I mean, are we talking about we have to sing it? Do we have to sing it well? Is there's a difference.
For me, it's not K-pop at all, but like, depending on who I'm with, and also like, usually as a joke, my heart would go on.
That's a good one. That's a good performance one if you're doing it on your own too.
Yeah.
Latest K-pop bop, top of your playlist.
Fever by N-Hypen.
This isn't new, but I've been listening to it recently. Bon Bon Chocolat. I've been listening to it constantly. Hello.
I don't know if it's because like I got the BTS McDonald's meal lately, but like literally like I won't be thinking about them, but then suddenly I hear like the refrains of butter in my head. It's like a phantom like BTS memory.
Okay. Two more. Next one, second to last, favorite Korean comfort food.
Comfort food. Soup. Any kind of like hot soup, like any jjigae, like kimchi jjigae or like sundubu jjigae, any kind of soup with rice. Oh, rice. I could just eat rice on its own. Is that weird?
Hey, oh my God. Mine, okay, so during the pandemic, I don't normally cook that much, but pandemic I had to cook, and like I cooked kara rice, brown curry rice constantly. So that's kind of the one, because like, and also I just eat like 10 pounds of rice while I'm eating it. And weird, okay, I'm such a bad Korean. I don't love kimchi all the time, but I love it with curry rice.
Shame. I'm just kidding. I'm very picky when it comes to food. Like I don't like eating hot foods in summer, and like I don't like eating cold foods in winter. So in the summer, 물냉면, like cold buckwheat noodles, or like fried chicken. And in the winter, like sundubu, like 육개장, like all those like stews.
Oh my God, Lyla, you're such a good Korean. That's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like maybe two more. Next, second to last one. Do you own any light sticks? And if so, which ones?
Yes. BTS and Super M. This doesn't light up.
This is obviously my favorite. It's Blackpink's Heart Hammer, and it should like light up and like light up to music, but the batteries died right away. But it makes a cute sound.
Yeah.
So.
So this is actually like swag that I got custom. I made for I'll Be the Ones to Be last year. That I was giving out for my pre-order campaign, but I was gonna save it for the BTS concert, which is supposed to be last year as well. But like obviously didn't happen, so I'm saving it for whenever BTS comes stateside.
And quick last one, your K-drama you're currently watching right now.
Nevertheless,
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's very sexy. So if you like want to watch like R-rated, that's not R-rated, but like CW. Oh no, what happened? I popped out. Oh no.
You're still
Oh,
good.
sorry.
Good.
I got a phone call and it knocked me out of screen. Yes, nevertheless, it's like a mature K-drama.
Oh, okay.
My favorite recent one is Startup. It's so good.
Oh.
But my favorite kind of like of all time is Sky Castle. I love Sky Castle.
I'm like kind of like, I don't know, I've been like seeing new shows on like Instagram and stuff, but I haven't really like, I'm like in the process of moving right now, so I haven't really had time to sit down and watch a new show. But my partner, I got him to K-pop, and now he's watching Memories of Alhambra, so I've been rewatching it with him.
Hyunjin.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for participating in that lightning round. So now I think it's time to pivot to our viewer questions. So there's still time to add questions on the bottom down there in the Q&A spot. But now we'll see what we have first. So our first question is from Kat Show. And Kat asks, so, if the three of you were in a K-pop group together, what positions would you have in the group?
I'm laughing because this was like a question that was asked in our last event, and everyone was like, "You're the magnet, the young leader."
Yeah, Lyla.
Because I'll be the magnet again.
You're like the wise magnet.
Yeah, you can, but you're also like the golden magnet because you can do everything.
Okay. I accept then.
Yeah. And Lyla and Achi are both the visual. Co-visual.
Please, you're a visual.
Oh.
Yeah, actually, Stephan, you'd be the visual.
Selfie posted. It was very K-poppy. I was like, yeah, he pulled it off.
Yeah, me too. I was like, ooh. People would see this on my stories and be like, who's that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if Kat could be in our group, she'd probably be leader, I feel like.
Leader.
Oh, she's such a leader.
Yeah. And I would be, I don't know, maybe a singer? Not bad.
Oh God. You know, I think I would be, okay, you know how like Soo Young of Girls' Generation, like they always give her like the mic because she always wants to, I think I would be, because I'm kind of like talkative, I think I would do that.
Oh yeah, you could be like a spokesperson, yeah.
I'm totally already a fan. Oh my gosh. So our next one is from Saudia, and they ask, what group would the K-pop idol characters in your book be in real life? So who would you fan?
That's a good question.
Fan cast in your books.
Well, yeah, I guess just being really realistic would have to be a younger group. If we're just being really realistic, like it couldn't be BTS because they're all older. So I guess maybe like NHYPEN or TXT, one of those for my group, XOXO. It's like a boy band.
Yeah, I think this is more relevant to my sequel where, you know, not really a spoiler, but there's an actual group that debuts. And I think it would be kind of like Blackpink a little bit in terms of like the hype and all that. But I think like personally, they're a little bit more like Red Velvet with their personalities. And they're kind of one of my ults, so.
Red Velvet is one of my favorite girl groups. I love their music.
Yeah. And also in the sequel, there's a rival girl group, like a group that doesn't seem to be trying as hard, but they're just very lovable, but like, they kind of remind me of ITZY. The thing that they don't try, you know, but they're just like effortlessly like amazing. Yeah.
I love that.
For me, it's kind of weird because like I like drop I named up a bunch of different K-pop artists, like K-pop groups that actually exist. So I feel like that'd be weird for me to be like, they'd be them, but they already exist in the world. But but I mean, Sky, I think I always saw her as like more like a solo artist, like Chungha or Sunmi or Lehigh. So she'd just be a solo artist.
Mhm.
Love it. Our next one is also from Kat. Kat also asks, all three of you write in multiple mediums: chapter book, YA, fantasy, contemporary, and entertainment media. How do you go back and forth between the different types of writing you do? And does your writing in one medium ever influence your writing in another?
I'm laughing because like, sorry, actually you go first. You go first.
I was gonna say, I think it actually it makes it easier for me because they're so different, going from one to the other, and also it feels like a fresh challenge each time too. Especially I went from sci-fi to actually fantasy and then contemporary because I wrote my fantasy that's coming out next year before I wrote this contemporary, and it felt like a very different book to me. Like I felt like my voice was the same, my writing was the same, but it felt like a completely different book to me. And I also was trying to do different things with them. Like with my dystopia, I was thinking it'd be like moody, angsty, like anime vibes. And then my rom-com, I was thinking it would be like really fun, happy vibes. And then my fantasy, I was thinking it'd be really romantic, literary vibes. So like each book, because they're so different, it actually was easier that way because I didn't have to, I think if I was writing the same type of book or whatever, or not over again, but like following each other, it might be harder just be like, I just wrote a book like this, I need new content. But yeah, I definitely do that thing that like some K-dramas do where it's like there's a part in XOXO where they like talk about this K-drama that just came out, and I name the K-drama after my first two books. And it was like they're called the Lyla couple because the main characters in my books, I just said that like the actor's name was the characters for my books, and I just had like a cute nod. So if you've read Rebel Soul, then you'll recognize the characters' names, that kind of thing.
And what I think is so exciting, like especially now, because like I think even 5 years ago, like people would try to like box you in as a certain kind of author, but I feel like lately there's so much less of that. And like I don't know, you don't have to think of yourself as one category anymore. You can just think of yourself as a writer, and like your voice is what defines you, not like the category. So like, I don't know, it's all writing, you know, whether you're writing a pilot or an adult novel, because I'm writing an adult novel, and just like Axie said, like it has nothing to do with anything. It's so wide, everything about it's really different, but it's also just like, it's also me. And I am having fun because I'm doing like the most subtle references ever to the K-pop confidential world, and like, yeah, but like it's fun because it's you. Yeah, it's your empire, you know.
Yeah.
Your universe. But yeah, for me, I was laughing before because like one of the most popular questions that I think people like to ask me, because I write chapter books and I write young adult. And for me, I feel like I'm like an educator, so like for me, I like always focus on like how would my teens talk versus how would my elementary school students talk, and that really helps me like differentiate the voice between the two. As for like how they influence each other, so I actually include a character in Abuda 1 who enters the competition with Sky. Her name is Mindy. And I got so many DMs like, is that Mindy in the future? Just become a K-pop star? So I'm so glad that people caught it, because like, yes, that's Mindy. Abuda 1 is set several years in the future.
Oh, your mom.
So yeah.
So our next one is from Jessica, and Jess asks, who are your biases?
Of certain groups, I'm assuming, or of like, you know, like my favorite is IU, but she's not in a group, but like okay, we'll name a group.
Yeah, I know it's more specific to a group. Is there a particular K-pop idol?
What about you guys?
Oh, I always like really like the idols who like sometimes get in trouble for being like really outspoken. So I really like Irene from Red Velvet. And who else? I don't know. I also love um Mina from Twice. I like the outspoken ones, but also the mysterious shy ones.
Mine is probably Hwasa from Mamamoo.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
she's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I feel like every group I do have a bias, but just there's so many groups, so it's like which one? I think one of my biggest ones from like since I was a childhood is G Dragon from Big
Yeah.
Bang. I love him. I think he's so talented, and I've been a fan of him since I was like a
I
child.
still follow his Instagram.
I know he's so artsy.
I don't know what they're up to. I hope they're doing well.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Lily. And Lily asks, do you have any tips for self-publishing as Asian American? Any general?
So I don't think any of us have experience in self-publishing. Do we? Do any of you? No. I would say, and I've heard that it's actually like, I wouldn't like go set. I mean, if of course self-publishing is a better fit for you, like definitely do it. But I wouldn't just shut your door on traditional. I would try both because like as an author, as a creative, you want to like have as many opportunities for yourself as possible. So that'd be my tip.
And I don't have any like specific advice for self-publishing, but like in terms of like publishing on your own terms, I would say like really don't be afraid to like stick by your instincts. And especially if you're Asian American, you're probably like maybe one of the only, you're like Asian, your whole like staff, you know, the people you're working with at the publisher are probably not Asian. So like really trust your own instincts, and like if you have like a really strong opinion, don't be afraid to say it. There are definitely things that I regret not saying, but I don't regret anything like, you know, like sticking by my guns on anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just adding to that, again, I don't really have as much, advice on self-publishing, but I do advice in being open to different routes of publishing. Like my first two books came out with a small publisher, a small focus on diversity, and so actually I won their award they do every year. It's called the New Visions Award, and if you win the award, they publish your book, and it's called Two Books. I mean, the publisher is called TU Books, and it's an imprint of Lyla Books, and they published my debut. And so they like kind of opened the door for me, and they have been so great. So I feel like, it's not just, publishing with the big five or self-publishing. There's like a lot of different routes to publishing too.
Wow, winning an award.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for maybe one more. So I know we touched upon this already a little bit with Axie, but next one is from Jessica, and Jess asks, how did you decide on the cover for your books? So if you guys want to speak a little more, because they're each so beautiful in their own way.
I think I'll go first.
Yes.
So for my book, so I think it's like a common like belief that authors can like choose what to go in their cover, but the reality is that like we have like very little control. And if we're lucky, our publishers will like ask us for feedback and like kind of like ask us like what in general we want. So for my publisher, I was lucky enough that my publisher asked, and then my editor was like, okay, like, what do you want to see in your cover? And I was like, well, for me, I feel like since this is like a book that's so like a book where representation is so important, because I've never seen like a plus size Korean American girl on the cover before of a book. I said I really wanted like a real life plus size Korean American girl on the cover, and luckily we were able to find one Isabel Jones. You can find her on Instagram as Isa Bay. She's a real life K-pop cover dancer, and she's like amazing. So my publisher actually like flew her from California to New York for a photo shoot, and it was very cool. But besides that, I don't have any other say in it. Oh, I asked for bright colors, and I got bright colors. That's it.
Yeah, it's definitely the thing where it's like they said, can you give us what you want on a like they ask you like just thoughts on cover things, and in an email I put in like I wanted handwriting, title, and I wanted an illustrated cover. So and then I had like I put a Pinterest board together, and then I put like covers that I liked, and a lot of album covers I put on there too, and a lot of like just aesthetic looking stuff. And then they actually went and did all the thing, and then they sent me the first draft, and I didn't even know who the illustrator was until they sent the first draft. And I was so happy because the illustrator, she is Korean, living in Seoul. And yeah, so it was kind of like I got that original. And then they had different, there was like little different thing. Like originally Jenny's was standing on her toes. Oh wait, was it? No. I think Jaewoo was standing on his toes. So they were both standing on their toes. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because she's still kind of, yeah. So I was like, I don't know if I want him to be standing on his toes. But that was like, so they do like little edits there. But yeah, that was like the cover creation.
Yeah, like they definitely do ask you like if you have any general ideas, and like but like I definitely just trusted the wisdom of like the publisher too. So like I had like lots of opinions in like the sketch stage, but then once I actually saw the finished thing, I was like, oh my god, I love it.
Yeah.
Both times I was like, yeah, oh my god, I love it. Oh, and such a cool thing about XOXO is when you take the cover off, you still have all the design. It's so cool. I love it so much. That is
so pretty.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I think we have to transition into closing. I wish we had more time for talking. I could talk forever, but I think my fellow bookseller Isa is waiting to close us out. Check those out.
I am so sorry that we have to cut this short. It's been such a pleasure hearing from all of you, and shout out to my girl Irene. Oh my god, she is my favorite. She's my mother. She can use some Stan language here, but she step on me. But yeah, so that's all the time that we have for our questions tonight. Thank you all so much for your great questions and your contributions. Before we go though, we'd like to ask our authors, where can our readers follow you? Where can they find you? What's your app, basically? You can just do that like super quick, and yeah, you can keep up on your work.
Yeah, mine is just my name, Axio, everywhere, on Instagram, on Twitter, AXIEOH, and then my website, axio.com.
And I'm at Stephan M. Lee on Twitter and Stephan on Instagram.
Every time.
Yeah, and I only lurk on TikTok.
I'm at literary Lyla on Instagram and sometimes on Twitter, but not really. And my website is lylaleebooks.com.
You guys know where to stalk our authors and keep up to date on what they're doing, what they're writing. So thank you for providing that, guys, and thank you once again for spending your evenings with us. Thank you to Stephan, Lyla, and Lucy for joining us this evening and sharing your time and insight. And thank you to the viewers for joining us today. And don't forget, you can still click the link in the chat box to get your copies of our guest books, K-Pop Confidential, I'll Be the One, and XOXO. To find out more events, check out our website for updated listings, and you can follow our children's and teens departments on our social media. The handle is posted in the chat. You can also check out our past events posted on the Politics and Prose YouTube page. So thank you again, everyone. Keep reading widely, keep expanding your world and exploring new ones, and keep sharing amazing stories, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you and good night. Annyeong.
Bye.